Donald Trump, leave him alone. Trump responds to classified documents found at Mike Pence's residence. He never did anything knowingly dishonest in his life. Trump took to his social media site Truth Social defending the former vice president. Mike Pence is an innocent man. He never did anything knowingly dishonest in his life. Leave him alone. I think he's being sarcastic. Is that the point?
I don't know.
So
I guarantee you Chris Bertman wrote this story.
For those just tuning in, did he?
Yeah, I bet.
Yes, he did. For those just tuning in, they found documents at Mike Pence's house. And it's like, okay, why at this point, Nuance Bro is making the point, how come this is happening now with everybody? Trump gets hit, he gets raided. Now the DOJ is searching Biden's house. Now they're searching Pence's house. Is like the military finally, or the DOJ, the executive branch, some coup d'etat where they're finally like, let's just get rid of anybody who's got any executive chances. The president, the former president, the vice president, we're all gone.
They're not going to be able to prosecute any of this stuff.
What happened to Hillary when we found stuff?
Nothing.
But we weren't supposed to.
Nothing at all.
Interesting, right?
Nothing. And Hillary was in no position to declassify anything. She wasn't even in the executive branch. She was a member of state. But
it's a good question you asked. Why is this why is it happening to all these people right now? Like, why do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, did you see the other story about the FBI guy who was leading the investigation?
Was colluding with Russia.
Yeah, like he leads the Russia investigation against Trump, and then they're like, oh yeah, we're charging him for colluding with Russia. Like, there's something going on. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like the deep state trying to get rid of Biden, but in like a weird way where they're like, oh, but like there's other people we're trying to, we're fair.
Clowns.
Maybe trying to reestablish their their reputation with the American public. I don't know what it is.
I mean, I suppose that makes sense if the Department of Justice was going to go ahead and say, all right, let's start trying to fix our image because we've allowed it to be tarnished so bad, and the American people don't trust the DOJ.
No, I don't think they would be doing it like legitimately. Like this would be like the veil under which they say like, oh, see, we're hitting everybody, but they have a bigger agenda potentially at play where maybe they're not so happy with Biden and they want to get rid of him. I have no idea.
But who do they want? Like in that case, if they don't want Biden anymore, who do they want?
Someone who can win, someone who doesn't go against their wishes in pulling out of Afghanistan. Maybe Newsom. I don't know.
I think Newsom's the guy. I think Newsom's the guy that the Democrats are going to be.
Look. If you were a deep state cabal conspiracy villain, and you wanted someone to fit the mold of, like puppet Machiavellian, Manchurian candidate, like Newsom's your guy. I mean, look at him. He looks like he's probably a lizard person.
He's American Psycho.
He is American Psycho.
Exactly. So you're sitting there and you're like, look, I'm evil and trying to rule the world. This guy looks like he fits the mold. He's like a young Bond villain. Like Klaus Schwab is the old Bond villain, but he's like the number two. He could be the Bond villain. He could do it. Yeah.
There's a comic book character that he reminds me of. I don't remember the comic book character's name. It was a tertiary character, but it was just the way that the hair was, that it kind of flew back like pointy, and he would shoot ice from his hands, kind of like Iceman. I don't remember who the guy was, but.
That'd be cool if Newsom could shoot ice from his hands. I might vote for him.
I mean, he could fix the drought they're having in California
and global warming.
Oh, true.
I actually met him when I was a kid. I was at the mall in San Francisco, and he's just like sitting there on his phone, and I'm like a little kid. I'm like, Mayor Newsom, and he's like, yeah. and I was like,
he shoots you with ice.
He's like, can I help you? And then he's like, okay. And he goes back on his phone. I went and watched the movies for like 4 hours, and I come back and he's still walking around.
How old were you?
I don't remember. It was a while back, but he was not very nice. But I met the other mayor of San Francisco, Willie Brown. That guy was super nice. That was the guy who like hooked up with Kamala Harris, by the way.
Yeah, I mean,
oh really?
Yeah. I mean, he was getting it. He was probably in a good mood.
Seemed like a happy guy.
It was probably around that time actually.
Good for the vice president.
How do you feel about London Breed? How's she doing? I feel like every day someone is.
I mean, listen, it's San Francisco. You have to. You go with what you get. I mean, she's better than Chesa Boudin, who was the AG who got recalled. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. She's still not great. She's still she just goes with whatever the political winds are in San Francisco. She was for defunding the police. Then when she was like, oh, that's unpopular, even with San Francisco. Okay, no, I never did that. I didn't support that at all. So
is it unpopular in San Francisco?
It is, yeah.
Really?
Like that's why they recalled Chesa Boudin.
Was Chesa Boudin with the one with Weather Underground ties? Like
Yeah,
his
that was
parents?
the
his
one
dad.
where his biological parents were put in prison for like a Brinks bank robbery back in the day, and then his godparents, who I guess
Raised him.
that raised him, were Bernadine Dorn and Bill Ayers, who were the founders of like
Yeah,
Weather
yeah.
Underground.
But there's
So-
nothing to see here. Don't worry.
Yeah, don't worry. He's totally just like one of those normal Antifa communist types.
But he's your local attorney.
Infuriating.
yeah.
So are we 90 seconds to midnight because the country is going to implode on itself?
No.
Like well hold on, don't jump the gun too soon. Here's what I'm saying. You asked why it was that all of a sudden we're seeing documents about Mike Pence. Could it be that the political divide is inside our executive branch? So this is what I said in 2018. I was saying that I think we're on the track towards a civil war. And it wasn't because one day I just decided. It was because I was reading The Atlantic or something. And they were like, all these security experts around the world fear the civil war is possible in the United States. The aggregate estimate is like 35% chance over the next 10 years. And I was like, wow. And then I looked at the points they were saying and I said, with the escalation of the political conflict in the streets, with the bifurcation of worldview, and I'm like, yeah, it seems like sooner or later this happens. And I had a bunch of conservatives be like, no, it can never happen. The security state would never allow it. And then I'm like, my guy, what happens when the security state is impacted by the very same cultural divide and the same worldview divide? What happens when you have the DC bureau of the FBI, very pro-Democrat, raid Donald Trump, and then you get a Florida bureau who is pissed off, and so they say this is BS. So then they say, you know what, we're going to file and we're going to raid Biden's house, or somebody in Delaware does, and then you get the DC bureau again being like, they're going to come after Biden, we're going after Pence. And it's what's happening is inside the DOJ, they're going tit for tat back and forth with their political enemies.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an exciting, interesting idea that I would kind of hope is actually going on.
Matt Taibbi wrote a few years ago that we were close to this thing he called the arrest that man. I think he called it the arrest that man phase, or I don't want to misquote Matt, but he was basically saying that he's seen it in other countries where you get to the point where two black vehicles with government officials, they speed off, full speed, driving and weaving through the streets. They both pull up to the chief of police. They both jump out of the car and yell, "Officer, arrest that man," at each other. And that's what it feels like we're getting to with this.
Yeah.
Why would the DOJ go after the former president, the former vice president, and the sitting president? And Hunter Biden's being investigated too. And everybody's saying, what could this be? Is the deep state trying to get rid of Joe Biden? Yo, what if, I'll tell you this, I've talked to people who work in intelligence, and I've had them say, you got to understand, it's the same everywhere, as it's the same in here as it is everywhere else. I've had, there's a guy I met, I won't say too much, but a couple guys of different intelligence agencies, and you know, I get emails from people and they say, hey, Tim, I work here. Let me tell you what's going on. I've met people in person. They say, hey, look, here's where I work. Here's what's happening. And I'm like, why are we seeing this heavy bias from the DOJ, from the FBI? Like, why are they arresting pro-life activists, but ignoring the protesters in front of Brett Kavanaugh's house? Mm-hmm. What I'm told, paraphrasing, the gist of it, is it's the exact same. The based agents are scared to speak up and actually move on the far left, because they'll get fired, they'll get canceled, and there's higher up elements that they believe are woke will come after them. So they're like, the divide is the same everywhere. It's the same in here. So there are a bunch of cops who are a bunch of FBI agents, intelligence guys who are, you know, pro-Trump or MAGA or conservative or libertarian, but they won't speak up. What if now we're actually seeing a seat of power where the DC Bureau, I think it's the DC Bureau of the FBI is the ones that have been really heavy-handed, went after Donald Trump, went after Mar-a-Lago. What if now we're finally seeing some FBI agents be brave and say, we're going to go after Biden.
So
we're going to actually do our jobs.
So are you saying it's time, like it's likely that Merrick Garland will get removed? I mean, what is the shift here? Because Merrick Garland theoretically is at the center of this idea.
I'm saying, my understanding is that these branches all operate relatively independently. Like there is a centralization, there's some authority, but it's not like some dude in Omaha is calling up DC to let them know that they're going to go arrest a guy who is no, like they handle it on their own. They go to their district court, they go to the state,
they have autonomy,
the U.S. courts and things like that. To a certain degree, they have autonomy. They're expected to operate. My understanding is that, you know, there are people who are in these agencies or in the FBI or in the DOJ who do think Biden's corrupt, who do think that Hunter Biden is corrupt, that they're doing these illicit deals, but no one has the balls to do anything. I don't know, maybe Project Veritas got to him. Maybe James O'Keefe constantly saying, be brave. Maybe the FBI whistleblowers who came to James O'Keefe finally started inspiring some people at the mid-level who are like, we're going to go take a look at the president's house. Now, that being said, it was Biden's aides and lawyers who discovered and then released the documents. But it very well may be the reason they're pursuing the search is because there are people who are finally like, I'm done with this. I'm going to start going into it. And then why does Pence get hit? I wouldn't be surprised if it's because the corruption they're now saying, okay, we're going after you. We're going to one up and we're going after your guys.
Sure. And I also wondered with Biden's release, like if his aides are finding them, are they just trying to get out ahead of it? Like it looks chaotic to us, but like, was there another threat in play where they're like, well, we have to be the ones to say that we found documents. It has to come from our house.
I just want to say that's the most white pilling story that I've heard in ages. I love the idea of the government going after the government. Yeah, it just makes me happy.
Maybe, but I don't see it as a white pill moment. Now, I want to clarify. It was Biden's team who notified the DOJ of the documents. It was Pence's team who notified the FBI of the documents. So maybe it's just these guys are, I don't know.
So do we wait for Obama to also be like, as it turns out, I too have some documents? Like,
and then Bill Clinton stands up, I also have documents. And then George W. Bush says, I do too. And then they all like stand together like, I'm Spartacus.
Can't take us all. That's what they're saying.
They should take them all to jail.
They're surrounding Trump, even Biden is. I am Spartacus. Trump's like, he's got a tear in his eye. He's like, thank you guys. And they're like, you come for one of us, you come for us all.
They would never defend Trump.
Look, I don't know. I just think it's possible that we do get to the point, and this to me doesn't sound like a white pill. I don't think it's a black pill either, but we have to come to a certain point where either, like I mentioned, the FBI is arresting pro-life activists in their homes, ignoring protesters in front of judges' homes, which is also illegal, in the same capacity of illegal. Protesting here's illegal, protesting here's illegal. They're only going one direction. Certainly at some point, there's going to be a guy in the FBI who's like, I am done. I'm filing the paperwork. You're under arrest.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be positioning for future administrations. I mean, if you're in a political position in the FBI currently under a Democratic administration, when a new administration comes in and they want to clean house potentially in the executive branch and they, replace AG and everything, or they replace, head of DOJ, you could be the person being like, hey, I'm the one who went after Biden and his documents, even under a Democratic administration. Like, I'm the legit principled guy. You can still keep me around. I don't know. There could be something
they're
like that
jumping
going
off
on.
This sinking ship kind of thing.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, man. Look, 10 years ago, we had Gamergate. You had a bunch of left liberal internet personalities, and they were called far right and all that stuff. And then you get the ignition of the culture war. The culture war had been happening to a certain degree loosely, and then finally it kicks off with Gamergate. And now, 10 years ago, there were teenagers. They were 16 years old when this stuff was happening, and they were online and thought it was funny. And they were on one side or the other. These people are now 26 years old. They are now the interns working at some of these big corporations or intelligence agencies or government or congressional offices.
Or at SCOTUS.
Leaking documents. 10 years from now, they will be in their mid-30s, and they will be the mid to higher level managers. And in your mid-30s, we're talking CEOs. We're talking members of Congress. We're talking people in state government. And they are going to be in the culture war. So that bifurcation that happened and that split, as people get older, the split is going to be hitting every level of our culture, government, production, infrastructure. And when we get to the point where the boomers have, let's just call it aged out, no longer voting, no longer having an impact on our society, and it's Gen Xers holding desperately on to keep things together. Sorry, you got millennials, you got Gen Z, and then you're going to have the young Gen Alpha coming in to vote. And they are all going to be in Universe 1 and Universe A. Mm-hmm. I watched a video where a drag queen performed for teenagers at a high school, and everyone's clapping like this, and they're wiggling little sticks in the air, and I'm like, that's a completely different universe. Mm-hmm. Like the people who watch this show, the people who watch Crowded, the people who watch Daily Wire, to ignite that controversy, but the people who watch this space would not be clapping and cheering watching drag queens in lewd outfits perform for children, but to them, they like it. It's normal. I'm like, two completely different worlds.
Well,
literally.
There was that video of like a little toddler like shooting his pistol or whatever, and people were like, "Oh, you're not okay with like kids doing drag shows, but you are okay with this. You're pushing a agenda."
That was one of the most insane discourses on Twitter that I've seen in a long time.
It's like two countries exist already. It's just not obvious that they have completely separated.
In that example, they were calling it grooming. It's like he's teaching his son like basic gun safety.
And
it's so crazy.
And when you try to call that kind of stuff grooming, you obfuscate the fact that there is actual grooming. You obfuscate child rape.
But
like there's no two ways about that. Like it's not, you can't say, oh well, it's grooming this kid because he's showing him how to properly handle a gun, blah blah, and then be like, that's not distracting from the fact that there is actual child rape going on.
But
like,
this is the thing, they don't care.
They don't. They have no moral
There's a
basis
meme.
for any of their perspective. They don't.
There's a meme, and it's Kyle Rittenhouse and Greta Thunberg, and it says, their youth are not like our youth. And you know what the funny thing about that meme is? The left and the right both share it in the exact same way, unironically.
It's the only uniting thing. Yeah. The other one is there was some 15-year-old who like protested a LGBT rally or something, like holding a crucifix, and the police carried him off like he's hands feet, and they put it next to the one of Greta, and they're like, we just want to see what's happening here.
Insane. I mean, just the way that I don't want to beat a dead horse about Rittenhouse, but just the way that Rittenhouse was classified is completely insane. People still talk about Rittenhouse as if he was, he's guilty of aggressive murder. It's ridiculous.
I mean, did you see that story? This is to your earlier point about that gay couple that like they adopted.
Yeah.
And they, so like people were talking about that story, and then the reactions I saw from certain people who supposedly on the right, like this is two people in particular, but like their first reaction their first reaction was to post like, oh look, but here's a photo of a little girl at a Hooters. Like, if you're not as like, how come the people who oppose this never talk about this? It's like, if that's your first reaction is to pull of whataboutism when a story about a gay couple raping their adoptive kid is,
and again,
that's very sus.
It's rape. And it's like, oh, we're going to get food at Hooters and we're going to compare it with rape.
Well, also,
what are you talking about? It's insane.
I want to mention the Hooters thing too, because it's like we talk about grooming with these people dancing in lewd outfits for children, and it's like, look, man, I don't think you should bring your kids to Hooters because it's kind of lowbrow. Yeah. But there's a big difference between the women there are wearing shirts and shorts. Okay. That like you can see their cleavage, but women wear those things in public all the time. They walk around doing that. That is a social norm that you might be like, well, I don't like my kids around that stuff, but people do it everywhere. I would recommend not bringing your kid to Hooters, but the fact that women have a body shape and wear, I don't even want to call them skimpy outfits necessarily. It's not they're wearing bikinis or anything. They're just wearing shorts and
form-fitting.
Right. Not appropriate for kids, in my opinion. At the same time, very different from a strip show. Very different from having a drag queen strip in front of children, or having children strip for them at a gay bar, which they've been doing.
Or what was
they're
the one of
literally
the
sex clowns. Like drag queens are sex clowns. That's what they are. They're sexualized clowns. Yeah. Like they're the whole.
Well, it's burlesque. It's
a good crossover between the two.
It's like LGBT burlesque.
Yeah.
And Jen Kuger put out this tweet, and he was like, if I had the money, I'd put on the biggest drag show. And my first thought was like,
you do have the money, saying
yeah,
do it.
He does. It's not that expensive. I mean, you can do it for a couple grand. My attitude is like, dude, I'll put on a big drag show. This would be awesome. We'll go to local theater. We'll do a big drag show. We'll get some of the best drag queens. We'll invite, everybody. We'll do free food, free drinks. Of course, with the drinks, 21 up only.
I will dress in drag for that.
21 and up
beard.
and only. We have booze because it's for adults. And I have no issue with adults wanting to do entertainment, silly, funny things like this or whatever they want to do. It's the weird thing that they're going after kids. But anyway, my ultimately, to bring it back to we're talking about the classified documents. The point is two clearly different realities. And if you've got people right now that we're at the point where we are actually watching these people have children strip on stage at gay bars. There was a young boy. I'm not going to say his name because his family's litigious. He's ripping his clothes off and dancing around, and they're giving him money. I'm like, that's what stripping is. Okay, yeah. You can call it go-go dancing, you can call it stripping, you can call it bikini bars, whatever you want to call it. It's all the same thing. Not all strip clubs are fully nude. In a lot of states, it's illegal to be fully nude, so they have to wear bras and panties. Having a little kid prance around in his underwear for money, what do you think you're doing? There are people defending that, and they say, what's wrong with it? I know a guy who's a leftist. I talk to him all the time, And he said, what's wrong with sex education? And I was like, bro, we were talking about Chicago in the Project Veritas expose. I said, giving kids sex toys and lube is not sex ed. That's kink education. Sex education is like, here's the reproductive parts of the body. Here's what they do. Here's why they do it. Here's what you need to know about safety. Going to a kid and being like, here's a variety of toys, whips, cat o' nine tails or whatever. It's
you
like,
can look at you can look at sex education like a Chilton's book for like a car, right? Sexual education is how it works. These are the body parts, et cetera, et cetera. Once you start describing sexual acts that sound like you're selling a car, that's different. It's like if you're trying to explain how to use lube and stuff like that, that's trying to create an allure and instruct kids about pleasure and all the adult themes that go along with sex. If you're talking about sexual education, it's like, you can talk about the body parts and talk about the functions and stuff like that. But to talk about lube and stuff like that, that's
kink.
enticing. Yeah, it's enticing.
It's kink.
Young adults who are just learning about sexuality.
I'm going to make one more point on this before we go on to the next story, because I've made so many points about this. But Nuance Bro, have you read this book?
I'm familiar with the genderqueer book and
Did you
what's
read
in
it?
it. I did not read it, but I am familiar with what's in it. Yeah.
I got close to the end. I haven't read the whole thing so far, but I will just point out a few very important things that people don't understand about this book. The first thing everybody knows about this book is that it was shown to children, and it has inappropriate images of sexual activity among adults. The characters in it are in their 20s, I think, at the time when they're engaging in these activities. They're showing these explicit activities to children, and the author said in an interview it should have been more explicit. The first thing people don't know about it, which many of you may know because you've heard me say it ad nauseum, but I'll say it for those that aren't familiar, is that the intro to the story is this woman talking about her severe psychological trauma and abuse, but it's clear she doesn't understand she was abused by her parents. Made to pee in the yard when she was 3 years old. She couldn't read till she was 12. She would wear dried, old, crusted pads with blood flaking off of it when she went to school. And she smelled so bad, she got called into the counselor and told, you need to learn basic hygiene. And my question is, where are her parents? Her parents were abusing her. Mm-hmm. What you discover in the end of the book, she explains that what she's doing is actually her sexual fetish. She is aroused by being perceived as a man. She says it in the book. And then it's like, interesting. So it would seem that the entire thing they're teaching children is they want you to engage in the sexual fantasies of other adults in day-to-day life.
Isn't that called autogynephilia when you're turned on by, or is it that only when it's
autoandrophilia?
Autoandrophilia
is what she calls it.
All right.
So she's aroused at the thought of herself being a man.
Yep.
And so you have to imagine when this person is going around and saying, call me this, it's like, are you asking us to engage in your sexual fantasy to arouse you?
Well, and it's the same thing to Phil's point, if they're giving specific descriptions of like sexual acts, as opposed to like, here is how biology works, they are making it so that we are dominated by being compelled to pursue sexual desire at all times, and it begins at extremely young age, and it's all that
grooming kids.
It's grooming. And I think what's sad about this is like, to the story about the couple with the boys and this book, like they are abused, and the fact that we are not willing to be united on the front of like abusing children in any capacity is bad is such a red flag for our society. It's so bizarre to me that regardless of your political belief, you can't be like, yes, I am 100% against child abuse. That's disturbing.
So where I'll bring these things all together, and then we'll jump to we'll do a hard segue, is just when we're entering this period where you are going to have elements of our own law enforcement existing in either World 1 or World A, because we don't want to put anybody second. You're a World 1 or World A, Futurama joke. Then people are going to say outright, you're going to have a cop saying like, that's an evil person. There's going to be a cop on the other side saying, no, you're the evil person, because they both see two completely different things. That's where we're going. When we get to the point where, right now it's millennials. Gen Xers are closer together. Baby boomers are very close together in their worldviews. You can even look at the political polling from Pew going back years and where the overlap is between Democrat and Republican. And then as you get into millennial, it starts bifurcating. And then Gen Z completely bifurcated. What happens when Gen Z is in their 50s and every generation below them is Universe 1, Universe A? Well, people are going to be fighting each other physically. There's going to be no agreement. There's going to be no overlap. It's going to be quite literally, you are evil, period. And that's how you get into chaos. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.